Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Brooklyn with Block Party Quilt Co. As you can see up there. It's been a minute. I haven't posted a video in a few months, and if you watched my last one that I posted, I was pregnant. I'm not pregnant anymore. We had our little girl in November. She's doing great. She's happy. It's just been a little bit of an adjustment for us to go from a family of 3 to a family of 4. So that's where I've been. And if you read the title, you'll see that I'm going to show you how to do a self-binding on a quilt with Minky backing. It's super fun. You're going to love it. But before I show you that, I did this technique on these 2 quilts, which is what inspired the video. I want you guys to have all of the resources you need to make all of the patterns that I publish. So this one, I wanted a quilt for my kids to match. So we've got a little boy and our new little girl. So I used the same pattern and fabrics that are kind of similar to each other, but not the same. So this is called our Bricks and Beams pattern. It's an awesome baby gift because it comes together so fast. And it's a really good pattern for showing off fabrics. So this is mostly art gallery fabrics, which we love them. This one has little foxes on it. This one's got little mountains. I wanted that to be super clear. And so I used this pattern, and it's a pretty neutral pattern, gender neutral. Also without all of the tiny pieces that are on a lot of quilts, it is stronger and will stand up to, babies needing to wash blankets and everything else in the house every day. So this is the one for my son. Maybe I'll move that out of the way a little bit more. And this is the one for my daughter, which still sounds weird to say that I have a daughter, but anyways. So this one is from the line by Riley Blake called Little Swan. And there's little swans on it and little dragonflies. And I used all of these little fabrics because, again, I like the way it coordinates with that quilt without being matchy. And you may have noticed that the binding around the edge is Minky. So the back of both of these is Minky. And it's super fun to wrap the Minky around so that soft is kind of on the front too. I'll attach a picture of my daughter holding on to the edge because she loves it, Kids love the texture stuff. So this is the Bricks and Beams quilt kits. We have it in these 2 different colorways. This is how it looks when you get it. So we've got the Minky backing. Oh, and all the pieces are pre-cut. So you've got your bricks and your beams. It's all the fabrics that I showed you here. You also have the pattern that's included. And I call this a baby shower gift in a bag. So when you forgot that you had a friend having a baby, this comes together in just a few hours. It's awesome. So there's my little plug for this new quilt kit. I love it, and I love it enough that it's the one that I made for my kids. And I'm sure these things are going to get washed to death, but they can handle it. So let's flip these over. I'll put them to the side, and then we're going to get into it on how to actually do this. So this quilt is hot off the quilting machine, and by that, of course, I mean that I made it in December and didn't actually give it as a Christmas present, but it's fine. We'll get it done, right? So this is what I'm going to use to show you how to do the self-binding. And one thing that's important is if you are doing self-binding, you need to make sure that you have excess fabric on the back that goes past the front. So if you're quilting on a long arm, that's kind of a given because, you need to have that to pin onto the machine. If you're doing it yourself on a domestic machine, then just make sure that you have 1.5 inches to 2 inches around the entire outside edge, or else this technique doesn't work. So the first thing we're gonna do is trim this edge, the edge of the Minky, so that it is the same size all the way around the whole quilt. And you can use cotton fabric, flannel. You can do this self-binding technique out of any fabric that you want. I just like it with Minky because I like to use that on the back too. So I am gonna trim it to 1 inch away from the edge of the quilt all the way around. And you can see over here, it's cutting it a little bit close. And that's why I'm only going to 1 inch on this one. So I'm lining up my ruler. The 1 inch mark is on that inside edge of the quilt. And I'm just gonna cut away the excess. One thing about cutting Minky that's kind of a pain is that it leaves fluff in your mat. But when you're all done, you can take your ruler and scrape it like this, and it comes off. See, so nothing to be afraid of. We got this. So I'm just gonna go around and trim that off. After I've trimmed a piece, I'll show you how I do the corner here. So I'm also looking for basting stitches. I'm gonna pull these out now as I go around. If you want, you can wait to pull it out until you're done. It doesn't really matter. Oop, that one's getting big. All right. You just wanna make sure that you have pulled out basting stitches if you use them, because they will show through. Okay, so now on this edge, I'm gonna trim it too. And you may notice that I have the selvage inside of that. And that's a little bit naughty, but I'm gonna tell you why this is okay. So, first, when there's excess batting, you just take your fabric scissors and trim it. But you don't really want the batting in there. So now that's flush with the quilt top. And I say this is a quilt top, I don't know if I really can, because it's just a big piece of fabric, and then it has this flower from a panel that I liked cut out and appliqued to the top. So I don't know. Leave your comment, tell me if you think that's a quilt top or not, and we'll come to a decision all together, I guess. So that's how we trim it. I'll trim all the way around, and I'll meet you back here. But before we separate, let me show you why the selvage is going to be okay. So when I'm prepping to bind this, I'm taking the edge of this fabric, the outside edge of the backing, and I'm lining it up here with the quilt top. Then I am going to fold it in again to go over the quilt top without like folding the quilt top itself. And we are going to pin this thing like crazy. So there's a pin, that's like the first one set in place. Set one up here. And then for going up here, we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna leave the corner off for just another minute while I pin this side. And the corner's a little trickier, but it's mostly tricky because it gets bulky as you're sewing. Once you know how to do it, it takes away some of that. So place another set of pins. So we've got this little guy hanging out here. If we were gonna keep going the same way and do the folding, your corner is gonna be like this huge fat rolled thing, and I don't like that. So what we're gonna do instead is trim off excess. So I have my fabric scissors again, and this gets a little crazy, so hang in there. But I'm gonna trim this piece of Minky to the edge of that quilt top. It's lined up in the same spot, and then I'm gonna cut it off all the way. So now if I were to unroll this, it has like the corner taken out. Let's roll that over the same way we did up here. And now it's down here. Make sure you have just a little bit of overhang here so you don't have a raw edge. But if you are using Minky, it doesn't fray. So if you didn't get that edge in here, that's not a problem. But I'm gonna take that folded edge here, come down in a little triangle. So I made down here, brought it here to the triangle, and then I'm gonna fold that over. Oops, slipped. I'm gonna fold that over until it lines up with the piece right here. Now, it might take you a couple tries to get used to how to do that. This one I'm actually probably going to repin a little bit because it got a little messed up. Maybe this pin's a little too close. You will find what works best for you. But the main thing you got to watch for is that this edge is folded, this edge is folded, and that they're touching each other right here. Now, I'm pinning that in place. There we go. Now that guy's going to be ready, and I'm going to place another pin right here, or I guess put it back right here so that I will be able to stitch that down easily. Now I'm going to go all the way around and finish pinning all of this down. And then once we're done with that, we'll go over to the sewing machine and see how we're going to put this thing together. All right, folks, so I'm going to be honest with you. An inch is really close to do this. I should have given myself at least 1.5 inches, but the cutting is done, and so I'm going to make it work. But if you are doing this on your own things, give yourself a little bit more room than 1 inch, especially if this is a new technique. On cotton, it's probably fine. And on flannel, same thing, but with the Minky, where it's kind of bulky, the inch is not a lot of room to work with. So as I say to people all the time, there's no such thing as a perfect quilt, and this one is going to be an example of that. We're going to just roll with it. But if you want it to look a little better, just make sure you give yourself more than 1 inch. Now I have it all pinned, so I'm going to take it to my machine. I'm going to use a zigzag stitch and a walking foot to sew this down. I'm going to keep it pretty close to that fold so that I make sure I get all of the layers in there. If you are new to using a walking foot or you're not sure how to put one on your machine, I have another tutorial video that I've linked on how to install and use a walking foot. So make sure you check that out, and then we'll come back here and I'll show you how I'm sewing this edge down. Now I've got all my pins in here. I'm ready to sew down the border. So like I said, I'm using a walking foot, and that helps keep the Minky from getting like all stretched out, or it just makes it a lot easier to sew on thick pieces and especially on slippery pieces. So I like to keep my foot or my needle down, so I just turn that setting on. So now when I stop sewing, it'll stay down, and that helps me pivot when I'm like realigning. It just kind of helps things be held in place. And I'll just pull this off to show you how it looks. So we've got the zigzag stitch up here. I've got just a little bit of that fold tucked under this way. And then on the back, this is how it looks when it's stitched. So I'm gonna go all the way around this, and I'll stop at the corner and show you how we're gonna handle that. Now I've reached a corner, and this is so much easier than you think it's gonna be. So if you're afraid of doing mitered corners, I'm your girl, because this makes it way easy. So I'm gonna bring, hopefully you can see all of this, but I'm gonna just stitch right to this pin. And now that I'm ready to pull that pin out, I'm gonna use this like it's a pretend stiletto. A stiletto is a little tool that you can use to hold the fabric in place while you're sewing. I don't have one, so I just use pins. And there's 2 ways you can do this corner. So if you want, I'm just making sure that all of my folds are tucked under the foot. So you can either go here, and once you get to this corner mark where you have the next piece of fabric, you can either pivot and turn and just go straight down this side. Or if you want it to be extra secure, you can keep sewing straight, hit a couple back stitches, and then I lift off and I drop the oil that I had to use on my machine, because if you heard it the first time I was going around, I definitely needed to oil it. So now that I've done that, I have this straight line going all the way, almost all the way to the end. I'm gonna come in and sew straight down here so that on this spot, it'll be like a little cross. If you don't want that look, you can do what I was showing you earlier, where you stop and then turn, and it'll keep the back in just one line instead of having the cross. So here's my pretend stiletto. I'm using it to kind of sweep the fold underneath and make sure that I got it all in the right spot. Now I'm going to sew again, hit a couple back stitches, and then bring it down the line. All right, now I'll finish this off and I'll meet you guys when this is all done. So I hope you enjoyed sewing with me. We completed the self-binding on this quilt, and it's a really simple quilt, so that makes it perfect for self-binding. And if you like this tutorial, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, all of those things, because that helps us have more people see the video. So we appreciate it and hope you guys have a happy day sewing.